Some ideas have come to me from the financial sector on how we could begin to scale this back. I gave a commitment to review them and work with the sector on this issue. And there are many other ideas that came to me from the financial sector with regards to new products, efficiencies, and so on. And I will begin that engagement with the financial sector. Yeah. Madam Speaker, the Student Loan Bureau has gone through many changes, making itself more efficient and more service-oriented. It is working to move itself to another level, a higher level, with a new and improved customer platform, which should have been launched in 2022, but is now targeted for the first quarter of the new fiscal year 2025-26. This platform will allow students to view their loans, print statements, and pay their loans online, among other functions. The SBL reported to me that the biggest challenge that students have been complaining about is accessing the information about their loans. However, as the student loan says that once their platform is launched, students will see significant improvement in efficiencies. Madam Speaker, during the 23-24 fiscal year, the decision was taken by this government to no longer require PATH beneficiaries to have a guarantor, and PATH beneficiaries would have 100% waiver for application fees. Since then, there has been an 85% increase in the number of PATH beneficiaries in 2024-25 versus the figure in 2023. Madam Speaker, I want to put on record this government's commitment to improving the offerings from the Student Loan Bureau by the beginning of the school year in September 2026. In September 2026. A Capri study has given us excellent suggestions on how to modernize the student loan offerings. We are committed to doing the overhaul of the student loan system and will engage Capri as we start that process this upcoming fiscal year. But so, Madam Speaker, to let Jamaicans know our headspace and where we're heading, we are committed to an increase in the loan amounts that students will be able to access. And for the disbursement to include not just tuition, but also housing, books and supplies, the cost of a laptop, and a stipend for meals. We are also committed to a meaningful reduction in interest rates on the various loans, and we are committed to longer loan payment periods. As you can see, Madam Speaker, these would be significant changes to how the Student Loan Bureau operates currently. And so we have to work with the Student Loan Bureau to be able to launch these initiatives for the new school year starting September 2026. It's going to take time to implement these changes. The student loan is building bridges and transforming dreams. But while we wait for those changes, this government, through the Student Loan Bureau, will be offering to new students a longer repayment period of 10 years instead of the current 7 and 5 years. And the rates will remain the the same, meaning the rates will not increase because the payment period has increased. We are starting with that one step, Madam Speaker, and will work rapidly to ensure the systems are in place to roll out the new loan offerings to make the lives of our tertiary students better and allow them to focus on attaining their educational goals to benefit themselves, their families, and Jamaica as a whole. The student loan is building bridges and transforming dreams.
So, Auntie Fayval, won't mind if I butt in a bit? The facility for including accommodation, books, and a laptop is not going to be made available this year, September coming up, but for next year. And she's saying basically it's going to take time for them to work out, the cost and so on. They're going to have to figure out how much it's going to cost the government, and so on, or the Student Loans Bureau, from the repayment of loans of the students. So the Students Loan Bureau, their financing comes from the Ministry of Education as well as from its own resources when it lends that money to students and they pay back. See? Yes. So it's not a program to be benefited from immediately. However, what they intend to do is to increase the length of time that it will take the students to pay back. So what will that mean? If the interest rate remains the same, it means that if they borrow, and let us say they had to pay back $3.5 million, including interest, over a 7-year period, it means that they will be paying out $500,000 every year to the Student Loan Bureau once they graduate. So they'll be paying $500,000 a year to clear it. Now, if they extend that period to 10 years, it means that they will be paying instead $350,000 a year to clear the debt with the Student Loan Bureau. So you see how much money they would have been saving? $150,000 a year, which amounts to 30% in the example that I'm giving you, right? So that is something that the students can look forward to. I am particularly happy to hear that the PATH beneficiaries' participation in the Student Loan Bureau getting loans for their studies increased by 85%. I am very pleased to hear that more people were able to participate. It means that those families that they are coming from will be better off in the long run. Yes, once them pass and do well, the family will get lift up as so the thing work. Yes. As for the provision of loans for accommodation, books, and laptop, not to mention a stipend for meals. Think about the persons who are living in the rural areas. They are the ones mostly that will be using the accommodation. And that, of course, is excellent, which means that more rural persons, very bright children, will now be able to participate. They only need to take up themselves, find themselves in a Kingston or Mandeville or wherever it is they're going to study, and do them thing and pass them exam and hopefully them get a nice job to take care of them families. And those who will become professionals, they will be in their community, building their communities by offering their services to their people. And as for the PATH program students, that is something when they're going to get the laptop. And even if they don't need the accommodation, they certainly would do well with the books, and not to mention the stipend for meals. So when this policy is finally implemented, it means that those students will be more comfortable in their minds that all the bills are being taken care of for the most part, so they can now concentrate on their studies. Isn't that excellent? Tell me in the comment section.
Madam Speaker, you may recall that earlier I highlighted the $2 billion that is in the upcoming budget for the DBJ for on-lending for many small businesses. In addition to that, Madam Speaker, we're also raising the GCT exemption for small businesses from $10 million to $15 million.
So you must be saying to yourself, all right, that sounds good. But what it mean? Well, Raising the GCT exemption from 10 million to 15 million. What does that mean? Well, let me see if I can explain. The first thing we need to know is who pays GCT. Well, everybody pays GCT, but the target of the GCT is not business, but people. That is why it's such an evil and wicked tax, right? Some will argue that because you only pay when you spend, it is a good tax. But there are certain things you just have to spend on, right? And the reason why I say it is a wicked tax is because it's discriminatory, right? There is no reason why businesses should not pay it because they are also consumers. They consume police service, they consume fire service, and a whole lot of other services just like people. But yet, the main party who are targeted by GCT are people. So how does the GCT work? Once the business or a person who is doing business is selling goods or services, then you are supposed to register with the GCT. Now, there are two types of GCT registrants, if I may call it that, persons or entities that register for GCT. There are two types. You have the registered taxpayers and the registered person. So what's the difference? Registered taxpayers, they are required by law to collect GCT from their customers, while the registered persons, they are not allowed to collect GCT from their customers, but both must be registered with the GCT department. So you're going to ask now, so who is it that is required to register as a taxpayer and collect GCT from customers? That now is how the threshold comes into it. Everything depends on your sales. The current threshold is 10 million. So if your sales is equal to or above 10 million, then you are required to charge GCT to all your customers. Now, if your sales is below that $10 million threshold, then you are not allowed by law to collect GCT from your customers. You're not allowed to charge GCT to customers, right? Now, at one point, as you can see from this is from the Matalon. Yes, I think this is a Matalon report from way back in 2004. It appears as though the threshold at that time was 144,000. At some point, it went to 3 million, and then it went up until it got to 10 million, and Fayval is now increasing it to, 15 million? Yes. So those persons who were making sales of 14 million a year, and they were charging the customers GCT, they are no longer allowed to charge their customers GCT. You understand? Yes, because they are below that cutoff. Their sales, annual sales, this is what they mean by turnover, is less than what the threshold is for collecting GCT from customers. See? Yes.
So in addition to all the items I listed that are in the budget, which was good news number one, and the work that the Student Loan Bureau will be doing to improve the offerings, which was good news number two, raising the exemption from 10 million to 15 million for MSMEs is good news number three. Madam Speaker, as we accelerate the pace of economic growth in Jamaica, accelerated capital allowance is one strategy that this government will use to move growth to a higher level. In general, as businesses know, because they currently get capital allowance on specific capital expenditure, like industrial buildings, plant and machinery, and information technology equipment, it is a tax relief to the companies because they will be allowed to deduct some portion of the cost from their taxable profit over time. This deduction, the capital allowance deduction, reduces the company's overall tax liability and provides a fiscal incentive for business growth and business investment.
So what Auntie Fayval is explaining to us is that the government has a strategy for growing the economy. And what is that strategy? The only way to grow the economy is through business, right? So they are now targeting the businesses to encourage them to grow their business. And how are they planning to do that? By encouraging them to retool and invest more in the business. And then you ask, so how are they going to do that? Yes, Michelle, how are they going to do that? Well, Auntie Fayval said that she is going to be doing something about the capital allowance deduction. What is that? It is an allowance, a kind of a tax deduction that companies can take out of the profits. A certain percentage of what it is that they spend when they retool. Retool means that they buy new equipment. So if they have an older equipment that could produce for them 1,000 tomato ketchup per day, right? And they retool by getting a more modern equipment or more efficient equipment that will allow them to produce 3,000 tomato ketchup per day. Then clearly at the end of the year, the economy will grow by the amount of additional tomato ketchup that we produce. And if this is a general improvement, in other words, a lot of companies decide to take on the offer and retool, and they were, for argument's sake, able to increase their production by 50%, it means that the economy will grow somewhere along the line, barring any disaster or anything of that nature. So by the government shifting the tax allowance, if that is what she's about to announce, then that now will make people want to say, ooh, all right, well, let me hurry up and go do this thing and take advantage of the fact that I will be paying less taxes from the profit. Now, it not only applies to machinery, retooling, but they can get this tax allowance if they were to put in information technology equipment in their business as well. If they were to construct industrial buildings as well, which more or less covers almost everything that a business will do, right? And if what they call this now is capital investment. So let us say they spend $100 million putting in new machinery, then they will be able to get a reduction on the amount that they pay over in corporate tax. That's my understanding. Now, this is only for a certain amount of the amount they spent and only for a certain period. So, Auntie Fayval is going to tell us what it is that the current capital allowance is and what it will be and for what period. And remember what the objective is. It is to encourage the businesses to expand their business. That's the long and short of it. And by expanding their businesses, what they will also do is expand the output, and that output is what now will contribute to the gross domestic product. All of the goods and services that we produce in Jamaica will go up as well. And all of that means our economy will grow. You get it now? Yes. Now, with this plan in mind, Auntie Fayval has done something wonderful. Master George never noticed it, or maybe not reached there so yet. What she has done is won over the economists on her side. And you all can tell me what Ralston Hyman had to say about it. Yes.
Madam Speaker, as a government, we would like to see greater investments among our companies. And so we are making a special provision for accelerated capital allowance on industrial and non-industrial commercial buildings, plant and machinery, which includes automatic data processing equipment. This will be over a 2-year period. We will publish that schedule. It is kind of too detailed to read out right now, but suffice it to say, it gives significant accelerated capital allowance over a 2-year period. And so we are encouraging companies to take the opportunity to upgrade their machinery, their ITC infrastructure, their industrial buildings, to help expand their output so that we can move the GDP growth rate to higher levels.
Auntie Fayval is a sweet, pleasant lady, so I'm sure she doesn't mind if I butt in. So the window for this opportunity is 2 years. So the companies have to get moving, right? Which means a lot of economic activities will spring from this, and within a 2-year period. So we may see the result of the action either in the 2nd year or maybe the 3rd year, right? If the companies take up the offer. And I don't know why they shouldn't. Because by expanding their output, it means they will make more profit. Yes. And by expanding the output, they will be paying less taxes, more profit in their pockets.
So as an example, Madam Speaker, for plant and machinery, currently the initial capital allowance is 25%. Over the initial year is 25%. The period for the capital allowance for machinery is 8 years under the current regime. So the annual capital allowance would be 12.5%. We are moving that to 40% in year 1. Yes. So the details, Madam Speaker, will be published for the companies. And that is good news number 4.
So good news number 4 is excellent news indeed for those persons who are involved in industrial production, manufacturing, and so on and so forth. Yes. So I am going to now go to George Davis and his co-host on NNN. It's a morning program. They did an interview with Nadine Spence, and she is going to be telling us about the student loan, which I do believe is good news number 2. Nadine now is going to give us her views on these announcements by the Minister of Finance, Fayval Williams.
Turning our attention now to more talk on the budget presentation by Minister Fayval Williams. Joining us now, the political and social commentator, Dr. Nadine Spence. Good morning to you.
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning, Tana.
Thank you so much for joining us here on Nationwide this morning. Dr. Spence, Minister Williams' first budget presentation. What note do you think she hit yesterday?
Well, I mean, I think she was very safe. She was very steady. You know, people, a lot of us were, myself included, when Nigel Clark indicated his intention to move on from the government and move on to the IMF. I was a little concerned. I was more than a little concerned. I was like, oh my God, can we continue this growth that we're experiencing, this turnaround in the economy with him not there? But I think yesterday we got the distinct impression that Jamaica, the economic management of Jamaica was left in sure, steady hand. I think the presentation was sober. It wasn't nice, and I don't think she was afraid to demonstrate that I'm not Nigel Clark. I'm Fayval Williams, and there's a way in which I speak, there's a way in which I engage people, but it doesn't mean that I'm not authentic and I don't know what I'm doing. And I think she communicated clearly to Jamaicans that she understands what the project is, what the work is, and that she is committed to doing it. So I was very impressed with her. A lot of the times we say Minister Williams is not the most exciting and engaging speaker. I don't think she's going to come away from that winning the exciting prize, but I think she won the prize for reassuring Jamaicans that we are still in good hands.
And what about for you, Dr. Spence, what did she call them, the good news? What did you make of the initiatives that she announced yesterday?
Oh, you know, after the student loan one, I work at UA, right? And I work with a group of women, and I called them to listen to it. I was trying to get them to listen to all of it, but they weren't taking me on. They said, "Miss, that's too boring." But then I called them at the student loan one, and they were so excited. One student said, "Miss, I think I'm going to go away and cry now, because I have struggled so much with trying to figure out school fees. Because in Notana, you know, I manage Mary C. Cole Hall, and Mary C. Cole Hall, which is one of the traditional halls, fees just went to 300,000 for the year. And there are a lot of students who can't afford that. And then, you know, we had to implement a program where students could rent a laptop, who couldn't afford to, would rent a laptop, borrow a laptop from the library. So there are a lot of students who I have forms on my desk now where students are applying for meal grants and bursaries from the UWI to help them to survive on a daily basis. So I think young people heard that yesterday, and they felt seen and felt heard. Last night I was talking to some of them, and they said to me, "Miss, you know, the minister listened," and they were talking also about Minister Dixon, feeling as if she listens to them, because that was something they were asking for. So I think for me, working with the people that I work with, that was a big thing. I think as well, hearing her talk about the emphasis on water as a rural woman, that's important to us. And hearing her connect that story, because a lot of people in Kingston don't recognize that so many people in Jamaica struggle over water issues. And when you hear a recognition, so women who, and that talk about how you carry water. I never used to carry water because I had a tank in my yard and my tank wasn't leaking. But there were a lot of people who had to carry water on their head, and a government that is emphasizing changing the water dynamics in a very tangible way. Not just talking about it in a very esoteric kind of theoretical way, but talking about putting money behind ensuring that people get water. I think people are going to be excited by that. I think
the path, Dr. Spence, the path to legal light. What do you make of that?
Again, you know, when you are in poverty, and when you can't afford light bill, and when you can't see a way out, and you'd like to be honest about it and you can't, those are things that make you feel as if you are seen and heard. You know what I mean? And so I think the raising of the slipping me now, I'm talking too fast, of the what do you call it?
The income tax threshold?
Income tax threshold.
Yes.
Any ways to put money back in people's pocket, and to get to talk about dignity, emphasis on transportation and buying more buses. And, you know, people are now thinking about, you know, I'm now thinking about, you know, will we get to a point where St. Elizabeth can experience some kind of turnaround for transportation? We see it happening in St. Thomas. Is it possible for us?
Yeah, well, we're now in Clarendon as well, so... Yes. We're not too far away.
There are a lot of goodies in there that people can say, okay, perhaps they will get to me soon. You know, perhaps we are seeing a situation where people are, and I'm speaking particularly for rural people, rural women. We will see a situation, rural school children. We will see a situation where we don't have to figure this out on our own, because so much of Jamaica have been figuring things out on their own without the input of government, more than supervision of the road, and that's it. Now we hear a government that is talking about helping people to get on the right path around electricity, that is talking about raising the income tax threshold so that people can have more money in their pocket. That is talking about helping young people, particularly rural young people who have to move to the universities and then rent space on campus and who cannot afford and who find that sometimes they can't do their exams because they cannot afford it. All of those things were very hopeful signs that the plight of the average Jamaican who's not had much representation in the parliament and in government, that their plight is being listened.
Dr. Nadine Spence, political and social commentator. Thank you so much for coming on, Dr. Spence, and providing your reaction to the budget presentation by Minister Williams.
Thank you both very much for having me.
Yeah. Minister Williams said yesterday, George, that the 10 billion to NWC was an easiest, a very easiest, because she understands the plights of ordinary Jamaicans. And she told her own story. I don't even know what a kata is. I'm going to ask you guys after.
Yeah, man. If you have anything, you can just make it out of your T-shirt. You wrap a T-shirt into a circle, put it on your head. So you have a cushion, but it also serves not just as a cushion, but as a balancing mechanism for whatever load you're putting on your head. So it can be made out of a piece of cloth, a T-shirt, a skirt, whatever it is that you can wrap into a little circle. You just rest it on your head, and you rest whatever you have on it. Yeah, you can make it out of banana leaf, whatever it is that is resilient, that can
ease the burden on your head.
Yeah, man. So as a cushion first, but as a balance, as a stabilizer.
Yeah.
But the primary use of a kata is as a cushion. Yeah, man. But people them skill, man, put all kind of weight on their head and just walk with it hands free.
I'm trying to imagine the minister back then carrying her water, kata. Ah, there we go.
Yeah, man. Kata, man.
Jeremy, click on the draw, showing on our YouTube channel, Nationwide 90 FM Live 2, what a kata looks like. All right, gonna take a break for Across Jamaica.
Well, that's it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me, for sharing, liking, and subscribing. Until next time, take very good care of yourselves and walk good.